Okay, so today is Saturday, July 15th, 2023. Another update. And I think if I had to title this update, it would be called Unintended Consequences. So how some small decisions can really have some big impacts on some things that you're working on. So in the last video I mentioned how I was connecting the subframe to the front clip, and I mentioned that I was using some half-height body bushings, which I did do, and I put everything together, but the unintended problem that caused was that the body was sitting down a little bit lower than it would have on normal height body bushings, right? So what that meant is that the transmission cross member came up a little bit higher. So this pocket that it goes into here now needed to be extended. So I had to cut the floor, weld about 1 inch in there, and then get that back in there. So that was annoying, but the other part is I'd like to know how anybody that's running a T56 Magnum in a first gen like this is doing it without modifying their tunnel. You know, I've seen some posts that says, oh, there's a little massaging here, but I don't know. Now, the mistake I made was when I did my test fit to see if it would fit, I didn't check it at the proper driveline angle. So when I went to put everything together and I went to raise it to the right angle, I was way off. So I don't know if you can tell here, but I really needed to raise this tunnel probably a good couple inches and widen it. And you know, some of the modifications I did here are for the 5th gen console that I'm using, so I can talk about those in a minute. But I just really don't know how people do it. I've seen other videos online that say essentially what I'm talking about, which is, oh yeah, this is pretty typical what you're going to have to do. But anyways, after a lot of work, and since I had to cut into it, I had to recoat the part that I did with the lizard skin again on the bottom. But it's all set now, but you know, it was a lot of work. And then of course, once it was raised up to the proper height to get the proper 1.5 degree down angle, the transmission cross member was too low, so I had to modify that. I'll go under the car and I'll show you all of that and other things. But and then here's the e-brake that I'm going to be using. It's from the 5th gen console. So this is the way I decided to do it. I basically made a pocket for it in the console here, and this cable is going to run out through the back here and then into the low car e-brake cable system. You know, I've welded some nuts in here to use for mounting the 5th gen here, and then these are spacers. There's actually nuts welded underneath there, and then of course the cutout for the shifter and all the rest of that stuff. Now the other thing I wanted to show you up here is, I mentioned last time the plates for the roll bar cage, which is now in and installed. So it was a fair amount of work, but it's done. This is the one from Chris Alston I mentioned last time, and these are the side bars. Alright, so I installed them because it was part of the kit, and they are removable as I mentioned last time, but I realized that they're probably going to interfere with the door cards or whatever I ended up putting on the door, armrests and things like that. So in reality, I don't know how much I'm going to use these, if at all, but they came with a kit, so I installed them. I'll show you where I am in the back. So the trunk, I haven't really done much else to what you've seen, other than put some more epoxy primer on the roll bar and things like that, so you can get a better better look at it here. And things like that. The other thing I've done, or considering doing, is some reverse lights. So since I did the exhaust tips this way, I don't have room for the traditional reverse lights. So I was going to do the ones that were part of the rear blinkers, where half of it's red and the other half is white. But I really like the all red look, so I'm looking for something to put here on either side of the license plate. Unfortunately, I can't really go through this kind of rear valance because that's where the straps are for the gas tank, and so it'd have to be something kind of surface mount, but I don't know. I've been looking at some options there, but we'll see. So that's kind of it for up top here. Bring around to the engine, you can see when I was doing the epoxy primer, I also did the epoxy primer on the firewall there. So I pulled the engine from the old subframe and I put it into this new one that you saw in the last video. Took it apart. So now I'm getting ready to, one of the next steps, I'll start cutting the holes for the steering linkage, electrical connectors, things like that, mounting the hydraulic clutch reservoir, and all that good stuff. So that's pretty much it for up top. Let me take you down underneath the car now. Okay, so we're under the car now. It's a little cramped, but I think you can probably see this. But this is another thing I wanted to point out about the lowering of the body mounts in the frame. So what you see here is the Hooker Blackheart headers, and they are supposed to work with this Hooker system, but they were hitting the floorboards. So what I did is, these are stainless, and I didn't feel like getting the gas, and my stainless welding skills aren't all that great, so I brought them to a place to have them modified. So he did a pie cut in them, and so now they kind of come out and they take a little jog. They go down here, they go into the rest of the exhaust system, which I'll show you in a second. So there's the driver's side, and see if you can see the passenger side here. So that's kind of it. The exhaust system, the rest of the way back, is the Hooker Blackheart, which is supposed to be specifically for the DSE subframe. So let me show you the trans cross member here. See, what you can see here is how much it's been raised, right? So this piece right here used to be down here, and it used to go straight across. But I had to raise it up by this much. You know, I don't know, it's good 2.5 inches or so, I forget what the measurement was, to get the right angle for the drive shaft. So I don't know, again, how people are doing this. I've looked at it and everyone's like, oh yeah, it's a Hooker, it's designed for an LS swap and a first gen, it just bolts right up. But that's not what I found. So then I went to the local drive shaft shop and I got a drive shaft made. So that's that. The other thing I want to point out too is that, you know, again, these Hooker Blackhearts you would think would work with the Hooker trans cross member, but I got the version with the resonators in them here. So they didn't fit within here. So I had to modify it on the other side to make it fit. So I had to do that. And then the other thing is that this is the location where the e-brake cable traditionally exits, and there was a bracket here, and it would hit the resonator, so I had to cut it off and primer and paint this. I mean, it's matches the powder coat pretty good, but that's another thing too that you would think, oh, again, they just all bolt up, right? It's a Hooker part with DSE subframe. They say it works, and oh yeah, right, not quite. So, and then on the other end, you can see the mufflers here. I've still got some bubble wrap around them, but everything's kind of in place where it should be. So you can see the four-link axle here with the drive shaft in it. You can see the whole DSC setup with the sway bar and so on and so forth. And the 4-link that you see, it's all been bolted in. It's all sitting on here. I've actually even put the gear fluid in here. And then this is the way the exhaust is routed. So let me get underneath here and I'll show you how it's routed. So these are well, I had to weld little tabs here onto the bottom to get places to bolt these up. So here and here. So behind here there's a tab I had to weld on. I don't know how you were supposed to do it any other way, but that's the way I ended up doing it. And then it comes back. This is the full 3-inch stainless, and it goes up. It goes over the axle, and then it goes. This is where it transitions into my kind of custom exhaust piece. So typically, normally here they would turn down, but as you can see here now, this is where the goes to the other exhaust tips. So here's the fuel door, and then here's the other side on the driver's side. So that's pretty much it. A lot of work done. The biggest thing I would say is, you know, I had to the work that I had to do to get the driveline angle correct. So in addition to the raising of the transmission cross member and the raising of the tunnel, I also had to take the engine mounts and lower them by about 1/2 inch. I had about 1 inch of clearance between the bottom of the oil pan and the frame, so I cut the engine mounts, disassembled them, re-welded them, re-powder coated them, so that I didn't have to raise it quite as much. And so that was a lot of work, having to rework all that stuff that I thought was done. But those are, I guess, the types of things that you learn. And but now it's on to more things like brake lines, fuel lines, all of that good stuff. So hopefully done with a lot of the major grinding and welding for now. Okay, and this is something else I just figured I'd show everyone. So this is the gas tank, and this is one of the restomod tanks from Rick's Tanks. And so the ones that they have don't have the notched corners for the 3-inch exhaust. So the other tank that you can buy in the market, I think it was from Tanks Inc., that had the notched corners, wouldn't accept this type of ZL1 fuel pump. So what I did is I kind of notched it. Well, I did. I notched it myself. So I cut this corner of the tank off and welded in this piece. Kind of put a nice radius in it, welded it in. And I don't think I'm going to lose any fuel tank capacity, because if you look at the level of the fuel pump, where it is relative to the level of the cut, right? So this allows me to get the 3-inch exhaust by. Then I notched it again on this end for the exhaust tips. And so again, I didn't really lose any capacity. But since I did cut it and re-weld it, it needed to be refinished, which kind of was the plan anyways, to have it powder coated. But I had it powder coated. But before I brought it to them, I was doing some pressure tests on it to make sure there weren't any leaks. And there was just always pinholes everywhere. I was chasing pinholes forever. I got most of them, but I sent it to powder coat, came back great. But just to be on the safe side, I did do some of the fuel tank sealer stuff. So it's kind of a three-step process with the different etchants and cleaners and then the fuel tank sealer to make 100% sure that there's no pinholes or anything like that. But so this is the tank. It's kind of ready to go in. So the other thing I'm probably going to do is, I already purchased it, is there's some of this heat shield from DEI that I'm going to put in here just to keep any heat that's generated from the tank. Here's the stuff from DEI. I got the black version, so I'll stick it on there. And I'm going to put it underneath the car too, underneath the mufflers and along the exhaust near the front kick panels, just to kind of help get rid of some of the heat. So.